What's up, guys? This is Simon. In this episode, I wanted to go ahead and let you know that I recently did a podcast, my first podcast. It was with Michael at Real Talks on the Rocks, and he is a local Bay Area guy that reached out to me on Instagram, said, hey, I want you to be part of my podcast. His podcast editing is so skilled and professional. Check out his channel. The link is below in the description. He does have a YouTube channel as well, and I'll link the Instagram as well. He does do little highlights. The podcast is 2 hours. It is about my story of becoming an entrepreneur and then a YouTuber, etc. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Do me a favor, follow his channel as well. Subscribe to him on Instagram. He has some really cool guests on there, and he's a Bay Area local, and it was just really fun to do the podcast with him. So I'm thankful for the opportunity. Even though his podcast is new, I do see it growing, and I wish him the best of luck. But let me know in the comments below what you think of this podcast.
Your father say, we're going to San Francisco.
I came to San Francisco from Russia. In Russia, there were times if you had something else too much, the government would come in and they'd take you. At that age, I would buy snacks at the stores, and then at the basketball playground, I would sell them for a little bit more. Be a little bit of a hustle for me, and I learned that early because a lot of the other kids were lazy.
You're busy pretty much 23 hours of a day.
It's about the hustle, the chase. Can I get it or can I not? People need to understand a lot of entrepreneurs fail. I've done many businesses. I've taken them all to multiple millions in sales. My most successful one was over 10 million. When you're young, while my friends were getting high and getting drunk at the nightclub, I was up working.
What is the type of capital you would need in order to be able to invest in a business?
My company that I took to 10 million started with $10,000. The grind is what people don't see on Instagram. It's so difficult and it's so stressful on the body, the mind. It's not for everybody. If you are going to try it and attempt it, you got to go all the way in. And I'm not done yet.
I'm excited for today's episode, everybody. I am sitting with Simon Katz, who is a local Bay Area YouTuber specializing in financing, real estate investments. Here to talk about how he's become what he's become, his upbringing growing up here in San Francisco, and how you can also take control of your own life and your own finances to become the best version of yourself. Simon, thank you for showing up, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me, and really excited. It's my first podcast, so I hope I don't let everybody down and bore them. But
hey, trust me, I'm only at 26 or 27, so this is I'm still learning the whole thing as we go as well.
I'm impressed. I love the setup. I'm thankful to be here, so thanks for reaching out.
Thank you so much. Oh, I forgot to tell you, if I ever look at my phone, I'm not checking the scores. Some of the questions I wrote are in there.
Okay.
So if you say something, I might be like, oh, that's right. Yeah. That's all it is.
And if you check the scores, let me know what they are.
I will tell you. That's one of those things I like to tell people, because if I don't say that to you and you're like, he's...
People are like, he's that interesting.
Exactly. I see. I always catch those and I'm like, hey, just
don't worry. Don't worry. I think this will be some fire in this conversation. I'll share what I feel like is great. I want to say first and foremost, I'm very impressed with what you've done.
So let's get the whole thing started. First thing, Simon, give us a quick 1 minute or so brief about who you are, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I came to San Francisco from Russia in '91. There was a Soviet Union collapse. Again, you know what's going on there. So glad my dad brought me over to the States from Baku, Azerbaijan was the actual place. Yeah, which is a former Soviet state. And I went to Raphael Well Elementary, which is in the Fillmore for the first several years, and then another elementary, the Marina Middle School, and George Washington High School, which is in the Avenues. So I've been here about 30 years. I've seen San Francisco change. At my early life, in high school life, I wasn't a good student, but then once I started a business, I was always hustling and trying to make money. Once I got to college at Skyline Community, I realized that, hey, I have only so much time left to really get it together, because a lot of the people I was in school with moved on, and I was working at Best Buy, and I was like, this can't be it for the rest of my life. I'm not that type. So I started an eBay business that led to another thing, and of course we could get more into those businesses.
Wow, that's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I just hearing the fact that you brought here from Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
Azerbaijan is the correct pronunciation,
yeah.
right? Okay. right after the Soviet Union collapsed. Do you remember that experience getting over here? Or too young.
You know what? That was my first time on the airplane. I remember, back then people in America, best country in the world, there's challenges, of course, but over there you get like 3 TV channels when you're a kid. Like you either watch those 3 and it's on a knob. They didn't have remote controls. I remember that because the first time we came here, I was like, wow, this TV has a remote control.
Hey, we're living the life.
That was like incredible, right? So there you don't have all these gadgets. It's not really a commerce based. I remember, the government owned everything, and that's a scare. So if they say, hey, how much square feet is in your house that you're living in? And you go, well, it's 4,000, or you say it's 1,000, it wasn't 4,000. Say, oh, okay, 1,000, you could fit another family in here. And then boom, the next week you have another family that could live with you. You have no say. You don't even know who they are.
That really happened, huh?
Dude, it happens. Man. Yeah, so we're very thankful. My dad's a tailor. He has a shop on 28th and Geary. He's been there for years. Hard worker. He works 7 days a week. He's like 80 years old. Still kicking. Yeah, I think he wants to get out of the house. Mom's probably, making him, want to leave. But I'm happy. I'm thankful. I couldn't do in America, in the Bay Area particularly, and Silicon Valley. What's great is you could do pretty much anything, and within one generation, in my opinion, you could build a legacy for you and your family if you work hard and you plan and you invest, stay out of trouble, and so forth. And that to me is the gold mine about being in the Bay Area, and maybe a place like New York or even Florida or Miami right now, or Austin, Texas, so forth.
Exactly. Yeah.
So these are like prime areas where, in my opinion, you could double up your money.
So why the Bay Area? What made your father say, we're going to San Francisco?
He had a brother here, and I think to get a visa or something like of that matter, this was like the landing spot. I remember when we got here for the first month, I stayed in like different people's homes because we didn't have our own home. I'm of Jewish descent, so there's a lot of help for Jewish migrants because that's why we seek asylum. But I think when you're a kid, and I think it's important for kids to understand that if you get younger listeners, kids could have fun in a box, right? You give them a cardboard box and they're going to decorate it and cut windows and this and that. And it's like, I think as parents, and I'm a parent of 3, as parents, we always struggle and we go, am I doing enough for my kid? Or good parents, that is.
Right.
And you have to kind of take a step back. Like a lot of people in the Bay Area have 2 jobs or they're working a lot, et cetera. And you got to take a step back and say, hey, your kid's fine as long as they're safe. And everything else resolved. So when I was a kid then, it didn't matter. I didn't have all these things because I didn't know any better. I just saw that remote control. I was like, this is cool. It's way cooler than before, you know? And there's more channels.
Yes, exactly.
So
what is your experience? Obviously we're kids, we, like you said, we can have fun just playing in a box and we're totally good with that.
Yeah.
What was your experience like experiencing San Francisco? Because you came here, how old?
8 years old.
8 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're old enough to know, where I came from, where I'm at now.
Yeah.
What was your experience growing up and how it compared to playing outside in the Soviet Union?
So in the Soviet Union, my father was fortunate enough to have a car, but I think he was the only one in like his complex to have it, or one of the few people. It's like a luxury if you have one. And it was like a small 2-door. It looks something like, I would say, a Mini Cooper here, but just Russian built, which is like crap. So here, it's you play within your neighborhood. You don't have, you may not have a bicycle. You would actually like make something out of wood and casters and roll down the hill. You know what I mean? And here people had stuff, and there was PlayStation that came out around the time I was a youth. It was, I can't say it was bad. I could tell you that, we didn't grow up in the most rewarding home, but that made me more hungry. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it was more of a experience to understand where I'm at. So here you could take a bus on 38 Geary and go down to a different playground and play basketball and so forth. So it's a little bit more spread out. There, I think I was a little too young to do things. The only thing I remember in Russia was there was just not a lack of activities. So the older kids would make us fight each other for entertainment, and that's where the toughness would come in, and that's what it was. Here, you do that, you get a lawsuit or something. It's
Today,
crazy.
yeah. Back in the day, it's like
Yeah.
you kids could find, they're like, they're just kids.
Yeah.
Nobody brush it off and then move on.
Yeah, come to my house. Let's have a drink. We'll talk about it later.
Exactly,
It's like, here, no
yes.
one does that. It's like, oh my God, Teddy hit Bill. It's just crazy.
So that explains. Okay, so you grow up in a place where,
Yeah.
for fun, the
Yeah.
older kids are like, "Hey, you two duke it out."
Oh, yeah.
You learn at a young age toughness. You
Yeah.
learn at a young age not to complain,
Yeah.
to get through these difficult times. That's a very. I mean, it sounds like it's brutal, but it actually teaches a lot of young boys, in a way, how to survive out there.
It teaches you to be a little bit tougher than I feel like the millennials or the younger generations are today.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everybody wants things fast. They'll talk a lot. That's why there's keyboard bullies. It doesn't teach you that respect. And I think that's why jiu-jitsu, is a really good thing for a lot of people, or any martial arts, because you get humbled.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be a tough guy coming in, and then some guy that looks like he rides a skateboard, has his hair funky, and he wraps you up, and you're like, oh my God, So yeah, I would say it makes you tougher there, and probably a lot of other countries as well.
Yeah.
And when we hire people from other countries, or even people that have grown up differently, they understand that. And there's a lot of people that don't understand that out here, unfortunately, and maybe even on the World Wide Web.
I mean, that's something we can probably get into as it
Yeah.
goes on, the jiu-jitsu part and the
Yeah.
businesses part.
Yeah.
But sort of staying in your childhood here, I remember you said you were an entrepreneur at age 13.
Yeah.
That was when you first started. So how do you get that bug? Because you come from a communist country where everything is like, this is all ours.
Yeah.
When you came here at 8 years old, how do you have the mentality switch to say, this is capitalism, or even know what that is, and I can go out and make my own way?
So, good question. The history of Russia, or any type of country with that type of reign, to get things, you have to be a little more clever. In Russia, for example, you were only allowed to have a certain amount of food at a certain point in time. Everything's rationed.
Mm-hmm.
There is no family. The family comes as a second, from what my grandparents, or from what my wife's grandparents tell me. There were times where, and you could look these things up in Russia, it's not a folk tale. It's like if you had something else too much and your neighbor rats you out, the government would come in and they'd take you. So there, you really have to oblige to the government. But to people that wanted more out there, they would be able to kind of get around that system by doing things on the side and so forth. So when I was a kid, at that age, I would buy snacks, or I would buy food at the stores. And then at the basketball playground, I would sell them for a little bit more. So because these other kids would not go into that store to purchase on their own, let's say whatever it was, muffins or cookies or anything. Candy bars were popular, sodas. So soda back then would cost under $1, I think, when I was younger. So I would sell it for $2 or $3. So it would pay my soda, and I'd have some lunch money, So it'd be a little bit of a hustle for me to do these little things. And I learned that early because a lot of the other kids were lazy. They'd come in there, but once you play basketball, you're sweating so much, you're thirsty. Hey, I got an extra, 12 sodas. What do you guys want to pay? And I wouldn't charge them to the point where they would dislike me, but just a little bit more, so I get a free soda, plus I have some lunch money. Things like that grow with you as you get into business later on.
That's really interesting
Yeah.
how you pointed out that
Yeah.
they could easily have gone to the store themselves
Yeah.
and bought that soda at the regular price.
Yeah.
But because you had it there in front of them and
Yeah.
said, hey, I'll sell it to you for a little bit more,
Yeah.
but at least you don't have to go down
Yeah.
the street or whatever.
Yeah.
That's very clever at that young of an age to pick out.
Timing and location, right? That's, they say location. And I was there at that right time. They're thirsty, or
Man.
I had a similar strategy, or like a power bar or something like that. Nothing different than what a convenience store does at that corner when you're there, right? So you
Yeah.
take that to the basketball court.
So with that
Yeah.
money, do you give it back to the family? Does your dad say, save it and one day you can do this with it?
My dad's and mine relationship was, I didn't try to burden him with finances too much. as I grew up, he would give me $5 here or there, and that $5 back then is a lot, right?
Yeah, I believe it.
So today it's like, damn, I can't get anything, right? So, no, I didn't give it back to them. They didn't need it. Both my parents were hardworking, so they just asked I stay out of trouble. They knew I was always wanting more, and sometimes not running with the good crowds.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't a good, young kid. I would say in terms of like being the proper educated student that's in the books and so forth. So I've known people that have even not here today, so it's kind of crazy, but that's how I grew up.
That's very interesting, because you would never, like, if I were to meet you on the street, would never have thought in a million years that this is where you came from. What you probably just assume, he's got all these businesses, maybe he got it this way. Yeah. No, it's like most of these entrepreneurs that I've seen out here have started at humble beginnings, or have come from like the Soviet Union as a young kid, where most people here, if they even knew what that was, the Soviet Union, could not even put two and two together. Like, oh, people live that way here. It was a brutal time for many people. So to come from that and become what you are now is just an incredible story.
Agreed.
But let's get back into, so you're about 8 years old to 13. How do you transition now to starting a business here?
So,
Or what was your first one at 13, actually?
So I was just selling these things on the side. I didn't have a business registration, nothing like that. It was just like kind of a short hustle. I wasn't rich at that age. If I made $1,000 in a year or $2,000 in a year at that time, at that age, I was happy. $1,000 to $2,000 for a kid at that age, at that time, was pretty good. I wasn't buying myself I never owned a pair of Jordans or anything else like that. You know what I mean? So I wasn't blowing the money. I was trying to save it, understand it. I think nowadays kids don't understand the value of money, and that it's harder to save it in some cases than it is to earn it, or maybe both hard, but the saving part no one teaches, right? Mm-hmm. Even from the beginning of school, no one talks about taxes, no one talks about saving and collecting and then passing it down. Like, I'm sure you've mentioned you've grown up here a long time or in the Bay Area. I don't personally recall a class where it talks about, hey, your future generations, where you have to what's going to happen when you have kids and you got to take care of your kids or pay your rent or any of that. That's not even a discussion.
No, I can tell you honestly, even from my own personal experiences, that I grew up in Hayward, East Bay, and very humble parents. Yeah. Things were kind of sort of carried over from the previous generation. You work hard, you save your money, and then as you save your money, you can go buy a house, then you can support your family. The cliche thing. Yeah. Investment wasn't even like a word that we understood then. The idea that you could continue doing what your parents did and live the same life was just assumed. Nowadays, there's no way you could live on one income for 99% of people
out here. Oh my God,
ridiculous.
No way.
So back then, as my dad was teaching me all these habits, it was built around, hey, just save a little bit here, save a little bit there, and then you can buy a car, a little bit more, then you can one day buy a home. It wasn't talked about how do you grow in your business? How do you make yourself more marketable? What does investment look like? Do you want to continue?
What is an investment?
Exactly. Do you want to continue this type of lifestyle, or do you want something else, or maybe something else is out of your reach because you're not one of the people that are lucky enough to be that. Yeah.
And you know what else is? My father's the same way, and back then for us, I don't know who to reach out to. There was no internet either, right? At those ages, so. It's like the cell phone came out, I think, when I was in high school or something. So, and that was the first iPhone. But there's just nothing out there for guys like us or even our generation. We had to figure it out. So the advantage of these podcasts and everything on the internet, if you really focus on what you want, there's like an incredible amount of resources to get you to where you want to be. There's no excuse, right? So before it was the library. You go to the library if you want to read about something, and that was it. And that was where the internet was, right? You didn't have a computer at home, which is incredible. But that's kind of where things are, and I think if you take advantage of what you really want to take advantage of today and really want something and you put it in your destiny or your manifestation, you could really achieve it. And there's just so many resources on the table. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a good dad. You don't even have to have a dad. I think 50% of families nowadays don't have a father figure, and that's what leads to a lot of problems in society. So the point of it is, if you don't, you can't use that as a victim mentality or any excuse, because there's just so much info. Don't be out playing basketball that day, or don't be out in the streets. Be on YouTube learning 55 different things that are going to level you up. And if you know that it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of work, man, you know, we all have good, bad days. I think as a man, you're a man here, I'm a man here. They don't know, like, people don't understand what goes on in a man's head. When a man tells a man everything's all right, it may not be all right. We're constantly battling things. And society's kind of always kept that under the rug. But on the flip side of that is, like, the victim mentality is not going to get you anywhere. So you can't feel bad for yourself. And you know, as investments, if you want to learn, and the typical investment, buy a house, retire, that house is going to save you. It's a good idea, but that's not everything, right? There's so many moving pieces you should know about, and there's so much resources.
Well, that's a good reason. That's a good point that you brought up, because technically when you were 8, 9, 10 years old, you had every reason in the world to say why you cannot achieve something. I grew up poor. My dad didn't teach me A, B, and C because he didn't know. The school system is public. You had every excuse in the world, but you didn't use that. You pretty much pushed through that. Now, was that because you kind of didn't know what you didn't know about how you could just sort of cruise? Or was it just, I need to survive, and this was what it takes to survive, you know?
You know, for me, it's a two-part thing, right? There's the survival mode. You want to be on your own as a young man. You want to do things yourself. You want to do things properly, but sometimes the direction is not proper for you. The people you hang around with may not be proper. That's going to leave you in a different direction, right? If you hang out with gangsters, you might be in a gang. You hang out with cons, you might do a con. You hang out with different things. So you got to really learn. You know, I personally wanted more in life. And I think if you're going to be successful in anything that you do, and you manifest it, you envision it, you think about it, you continue to try to achieve it, you have to be obsessed with it. And that's what I talk about on my YouTube channel. And if you guys are interested, it's Simon Katz on YouTube. You have to obsess over it. You really need to, like, there are things today I obsess over, and it's every morning I wake up, I think about that one thing until I get it. And when I get it, I'm on to the next thing. It's never ending. And there are people I met that are kind of like that mentality. And there are people that just don't care for stuff like this. They want to be outside, and they want to be enjoying the fresh air, and they have less stress, and they have less responsibility, less lawsuits, less, you know, you name it, less problems, right? But they're content with what they have. And on my YouTube channel, I've also talked about the blueprint, which is not none of this stuff I've actually invented. So I hope your listeners don't think I take credit for any of it. You know, Tony Robbins, I believe I listened to a YouTube on him and talking about a blueprint. I did my own version of the blueprint based on his. But like, hey, in your blueprint, you know, let's say this podcast, you have 1 million followers, right? That's your blueprint. You're going to be happy or happier when you think you've achieved that amount. If you get to 100,000, you may be as happy, but you're not at 1 million, right? So it's what you put out in your blueprint. That's your goal. And if something's missing from your blueprint, and that could go in life, you could be, you know, divorced or married or failing business or successful business, whatever it may be. If it's in your blueprint and that blueprint doesn't adjust to reality, that's going to affect your daily mindset. So there's been times where I had to adjust my blueprint to where I am, but at the same time, I'm keeping the core of what I want in my blueprint daily. And there's just so much in that blueprint that I have not achieved. And when I say blueprint, it's like the architectural plans of a building, right?
Right.
That's every piece, every room, everything, and just replace those with like house here, house there, family, health, whatever you want, Rolex, you know, car. It doesn't matter. So that's kind of what that is. So to me, I'm constantly striving. Even, you know, today, if I succeeded in something, you bet I'm on the grind for something tomorrow. The problem is juggling all these things. You know, you're doing this podcast, you know it, but you're also a police officer as a job. I'm doing YouTube. It's making jack. I'm not a good YouTuber compared to like a lot of other people. I realize that, but it's almost like therapy for me. But I don't want to give it up, and I'm continuing on the grind. You know, I may have 100,000 views in a month or whatever, but that to me is not enough. Like, you know, I want more. So.
It's funny that you brought that up. I'll take a little bit of a detour here, in that most people don't understand that most YouTubers, 99% of them don't make any money or pennies on the dollar compared to like the few outliers that we all see. So-and-so made $100,000 this month on YouTube. That's the unicorn of everything. If we're going to continue to do something like this, we really have to have a deep understanding as to why we actually do it. And we were talking about earlier, I really believe in a world where people have control over their own lives, which many of us feel we don't have in one aspect or another. And I want to be able to provide them with as much information as I can so that they can gain control of their life and decide what they want to do with it. So I'm on a purpose bigger than what myself is. This is not about becoming a millionaire or me doing this right here. But I enjoy it. I enjoy meeting people like you and hearing about your experiences. Likewise. And how you were able to accomplish what you've accomplished. And I want to get that out there to the masses so that they can say, here's somebody else who has a background that no one probably would even have known about, coming from the Soviet Union as a kid, going through what you went through and then been able to achieve what you can achieve. It's a great inspiration for a lot of people.
I'm not done yet. You know,
I know you're not done yet. I can tell.
There's just so much more, you know, and you have to have that. And it's, I'll tell you, like, just to get back on the YouTube aspect. I love YouTube so much, and like, why do you do it? You make a few $100s a month. That's really what I make. I'm being honest with you guys. At one point, I made like $5,000 a month. I was like, wow, this is great. You know, I could really have this as a passive income.
Is that pandemic money?
I guess it was. Like, I made a video. I invested in Dogecoin, and I put like 75 grand in it, just out of random. And I was like, listen, it's a gamble. I know it's a gamble. It's not a good investment, by the way. I'm not saying you guys should invest. Check with your advisors. But at one point, I almost made $1 million on Dogecoin. So I made a video and it took off. And during that time, I guess I got entrenched in the cryptocurrency YouTube algorithm, where I was like, leading. And then I got off it because I was like, I don't know, this cryptocurrency is a little bit, and today it sucks. But YouTube, for example, is such a good vehicle to learn anything. And just getting back to it is, if you want to learn how to pass a CFA exam, you could go on YouTube. There's instructions. If you want to know jiu-jitsu, you could go on YouTube and practice the moves that your coaches should be recording in class and putting on the Instagram. And then if you want to, learn anything, like I wanted to have a scuba diving license. And in high school, I didn't know how to swim. So my parents somehow got a doctor's note saying I was allergic to chlorine because I didn't know how to swim. We never had a pool in San Francisco. It doesn't make sense. So I went on YouTube and I learned how to take a swim test and learned how to swim off YouTube, passed the swim test. And then on YouTube, I went and I learned how to tread water for 10 minutes because that's part of the requirement for PADI, I believe, which is the licensing for scuba diving. So then I took my scuba diving test in Parrot Cay, which is in Florida. It's one of the nicest places to dive.
I almost heard about that area, yes.
I almost died. That's a different story. But that's just one example. You could do anything.
So with that, you mentioned something. I'm going to go back to the because you were talking about how you were hustling and you have a blueprint and you want to stick to that and you want to make sure it happens. One of the big things that has been something that I've learned even doing this is, and I've seen other entrepreneurs like yourself where you want to make, you got to get to the top of the mountain. One of the big challenges that people have is in relationships, because in order to get there requires a lot of time and you can't get back time. So when you have a family, wife, kids, they have to be able to understand that. And some people are like, this isn't what I signed up for. Where are you at? You're not home anymore. You don't know your son just had this recital. You weren't even there.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention it's probably one of the main points of any entrepreneurs or even business development. When you, a relationship, first of all, is like a marriage, right? It's a business partnership. It's a marriage. You have to have the same goals. And I think people go into relationships nowadays without having any idea of what it is. They're either attracted to the individual or things happen. But at one point, you got to sit down. And I made a video on my channel about it and actually got quite a lot of comments from friends and people that I've met through different industries, because they've had relationships where they want to be successful, but their wife just wants them at home, or they want this and their wife wants that. And that leads to a potential divorce, right? And with a divorce, it's probably the fastest way to lose half your money, right?
There's a whole community out there online about that. So
Yeah. So, but if you are going into a relationship, and if there's someone younger listening, you gotta make sure that person is 100% by your side, loyal. You have to trust them with your life. You have to trust them with everything, but at the same time, you got to have the same goals in life. If you want to just sit on the couch and play PlayStation, but she wants to travel all over the world, at one point, that's going to break. You're not making money sitting playing PlayStation unless you're on Twitch or whatever. And she wants to be outside the house, right? So this is like just random, examples. But I've met people where they're like, hey, my wife spends way too much money. She's spending so much money. I'm paying down her Amex every month. I limited her. I did this, I did that. And still she's blowing through money. We're not saving for our kids' college, etc. And guess what? I get the theory why people spend money. It's that instant satisfaction of going on like Neiman Marcus or whatever and purchasing something and opening up that box. There's big YouTuber unbox therapy, right? And that goes away quick. Just like acquiring items that you really love go away quick. It's about the hustle, the chase. Can I get it or can I not? Like, for example, in the Rolex enthusiasts or any watch enthusiasts, and I'm one of them, and I have videos on that stuff. Acquiring a nice watch is more fun for me than actually having a nice watch. I don't wear them. They sit in a safe at the bank or a safety deposit box, and I rarely wear them. But the hustle to get one, or you can't have it, that's what gets me going. You know what I mean?
That's incredible to hear. I mean, I believe it because as I've gotten older, I've seen the exact same thing. You want to buy this really cool toy. I got it. Now what? I hear the same thing from people who have Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Like, oh, I got the best whatever one. And then they don't drive it. And then they have to sell it for a loss because it's already been out there.
They don't care for it. It's the instant gratification of getting it. It goes away through the chase of it, right?
Right.
And the same, and that's what in business, if you, like they say, you could win the lotto, but in that person's future, they're going to blow through the money because they don't know how to do it. And there's I think there's a study of how many millionaires from the lottery are broke nowadays because they don't understand money. They don't understand the path of money. That's probably a video I'll make on the channel as well. But the path of money has it flows this way or flows that way. And there's all these cracks where it could go, right?
Right.
So they don't understand that. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, you gotta love the part of creating something. And I think that's what you're doing here. You're creating something. You love that. I think you're gonna do it anyway, whether or not it brings in everything you want, but just because you love to do something, that the fallout or the gain from you doing it comes naturally after you love doing it.
Like me for this is not about 5 months from now or 5 years. I'm thinking 10 years ahead. What does this show look like? Which is a mindset that a lot of people don't have now. It's like right now, how do I get paid? When we were talking about like Rolexes and Ferrari, all that clout, basically attention. It means a lot to us as guys in our 20s because we want to show off what we got. So we want to buy all these toys. And then we get into our 30s, whether we had them or not, we're like, that really doesn't matter to me. I really don't care which car I drive.
I personally love a Rolex or a timepiece. I've sat in some big meetings. There's a couple cool things about that group, right? There's a couple people I know that started their own exotic car clubs. And before I used to think of it, hey, it's attention from the ladies or whatever, right? And now I understand more about that club. It's like being in the American Express Centurion Club. You're a part of a membership, just like the Masons or whatever. I don't know those other clubs, but you're part of a group that has, like, instead of a gang, you're part of a very successful group in one way or another. So your path, which we talked about earlier, is you're hanging out with people that are motivating you, trying to level you up. You're trying to get on that level. So watch enthusiasts, for example, are successful people in most cases, right? And you're in that group, so you're getting business advice, you're getting connections, you're getting their lawyers, you're getting their accountants, you're getting all these things. You're talking, you're going to a meeting like this, and there's a table of a lot of you. In the Exotic Car Club, which actually there's a car club, Fast Lane Drive, you guys should check it out. I know the founder. He he reached out to me. I helped him out with something. But overall, in that car club, everybody that I met sold their companies for millions, over 10. Have done things that I don't, would go, wow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also wouldn't expect from that person if you met. And at that same time, you network with these people, and then you get some ideas, and those ideas carry over to your business. It's motivating.
Right.
And I think that's important. So although it looks fancy and you go, I don't need to spend money on that, in some cases I agree. When I buy something, it's always an investment. And you have to ask yourself if you're buying that as an investment, or are you just blowing money away? Is it a toy?
That exactly. And I'll bring one thing up with that is that you mentioned you're a Centurion Club card.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, that's the Amex Black card.
Yep.
You can't just apply for that thing. You have to be invited.
Yep.
There is a membership of like $10,000 you have to put in to apply for it.
Yeah,
and
you
then
pay a $10,000 membership and then a $5,000 annual fee
annual fee.
just to have a credit card.
Exactly. So for most people in the world, they would say, even if I got invited, why would I ever do that? But it's
Absolutely.
a different mindset for you. It's not the money per se. It's about what I get access to. Because I'm in this special club here, I can now meet the CEO of XYZ company who has a car, or his daughter goes to school with my daughter.
Yep.
We sort of it becomes more of a networking tool than it is, hey, I got this flashy car, look what I can buy.
Yeah.
Because at our age, it doesn't matter that you can buy a $100,000 Lamborghini on that card.
Yeah, and nowadays before, when I've been an Amex Centurion member for like 10 plus years, I think somewhere around that time. Before, it was a heavy card and people would go, oh, it's heavy. No one notices the card anymore because all the credit cards are heavy, right? They're all metal or whatever.
Or it's Apple Pay, so no one sees it.
Yeah, or no one sees it. Nobody cares anymore. Before, you would get that instant gratification. I personally do it just like you said. It's for the fact that you're in some group of very wealthy, very respected individual. There's like 13,000 or so I hear. And that's around the world. And that was a goal of mine. I said, hey, someone said, you can't get it. I said, I'm going to get it. You know what I mean? and people to this day, like, how did you get it? How did you do that? And I've helped a couple people get one that reached out to me that I vetted or, saw something interesting about that individual, and we became friends. And that's what YouTube has done for me as well. Is it networked me with people that are like-minded or where I want to be versus where I was, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a bonus.
And I've learned this over time too, is that as you advance in life, you start meeting people who you never would have met. You don't keep the same circle. You start branching out to see who else is around that knows something that I don't. Yeah. I want to get to X level here, and how do I get there? Well, if I can find somebody who's there, and then start to work with them, but befriend them, whatever, find a common interest. You never know what can actually go. It's part of getting. The whole point of life for me has been it's not a race as much as it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Yeah. There is no end game. It's like an infinite game. You can be content with where you're at and say I'm good, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Matter of fact, it's hard for people to believe sometimes, but it's okay if you want to be content with your life, because that's kind of how the world functions. Not everybody is going to be an entrepreneur, because if everybody was, then it's all
not possible. And in fact, people need to understand a lot of entrepreneurs fail. Personally, I've been able, I can't say I failed any of my businesses, knock on wood, luckily. I've done many, and I've taken them all to, except one, which is a marketing company that I kind of did because I hired a marketing company that was marketing all my other businesses and they weren't doing good. So I created my own, and then I started marketing companies as a consultant that were like funded by 100 million and so forth. It was crazy out here in the Bay Area. And then the pandemic had kind of killed that. No one was meeting up anymore. Yeah. But I didn't take that one. But every other business, it's been multiple millions in sales. And then my most successful one was over 10 million or about 10. Oh, it was over 10 million. Overall, people get this idea that this is so easy or it's so hard. No, you're day and night, man. I work at night. I got 3 kids. One of them is 4 months. He wakes up. I'm still up. Before, I would wake up at 4 a.m. if I need to exercise. Kobe Bryant once wrote in his book, he was like, hey, it's not fair to my family if I exercise during their time or do things during their time. So he would wake up early before everybody woke and get in the grind. So then when it's the family time, it's the family time. So there's that important balance. So same with work, right? If you don't give it the appropriate time or entrepreneurialism, you're going to fail. And it's so easy to fail.
Yeah.
It's very easy.
Like,
and they don't get it. A lot of people don't get it.
No, they don't understand. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them for not understanding, because people get to say, oh, that's $1 million business. I'll never have that. So if he doesn't make it, well, he's got all these other assets that he can survive on. I understand why some people think that, but let's put pen to paper here. What is your daily routine like, if you have a routine specifically? So people get an idea. This is a life of somebody who's opened up several companies.
So my daily routine, listen, I'm selectively lazy too. I will be honest with you. It's something I always try to work on. I think a person is like a computer up there. I deal with a lot of drama, a lot of things, a lot of problems left and right, whether it's from customers or business partners, you name it. I've been through it all. I've seen all types of businesses, believe me. Some we probably can't talk about.
I believe it.
Because you're a police officer. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
We'll leave that there, yes.
You know, my grind has been, and just getting back to that, being selectively lazy is okay. So if you don't do something that day, don't like go on, listen to some motivation. Don't give any day away or don't give any minute away. People talk like that in these motivation speeches. You're wasting time. Don't be hard on yourself. Because if you know how to reset yourself to do something the next day or the next hour or after your nap, you're just as good. So just relax, right? For me, my day usually is different today than it was many days ago or like 6 months ago, because I have a new baby, right? But typically if my kids aren't waking up in the middle of the night, I would wake up early and I'd try to work out. My mindset would always be much better if I worked out in the morning, like so much better. I feel like I could tackle the day and so forth. And I think if you're working out in the morning, that's the first way to tackle anything. You just feel your endorphins are up. You feel better. You're showered. You're ready to go for that meeting. You look clean. You take care of yourself, your body, right? That's the most important. Today, it's just cup of coffee, try to get out of the house in time with the kids, because that's like a challenge, man. And we're waking up and I'm yelling and it's hectic and I don't look my best. And then it's meeting after meeting most of the time. You know, I have offices internationally. I have employees here. I have employees there. So I try to do that. Then the kids come home. You got to feed them. My wife and I are more hands-on. We don't have nannies. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually important. But unfortunately, with the pandemic, we used to have a nanny. We don't anymore. We used to go out a lot, and then everything shut down. That we could get into that later. But for me, I come home, I'll go to jiu-jitsu or whatever. I'll do it again and again and again. So it really looks mundane. It's not really fun or exciting. I don't go and do these crazy things unless something randomly pops up. It's really just grind on the computer, make sure everyone's happy, pay the bills, make sure your kids are safe. And stick to some schedule if you can. If you can mix in working out, do it.
And this is the life. And this is what people, we have to understand is that you're busy pretty much 23 hours of a day. This is not I'm making millions of dollars, so I'm just buying frivolous things and sitting up with my feet on the chair, drinking a beer, watching TV. No, this is a grind to keep things going. It is a hustle. It is hard work, not easy whatsoever. Which brings up another thing is, when you're working so hard, what are you working for? Is it the children's future, which seems like an obvious one? Is it, I have to achieve my goals that I set out way back when, and that's really what's driving me? And then how do you, kind of the bigger one here is, how do you have that conversation with your wife when it comes down to, hey, right now it's focused on business A?
So, okay, so let's stick to the first one. When I'm working, I work towards achieving. Lately, my mindset with the kids has been more building a legacy. One day, I want to take a company public. That's been my most, in my mind, blueprint. That's a big stretch. I mean, you're talking something a little crazy.
Right.
So I might be crazy, but I'm crazy enough to not know my limits, right? So
can't do unless you try it.
Yeah. So that's my big goal. So I'm working towards getting doing more. I'm working towards making sure my kids, if they're not on their level A game when they're grown up, have something to give. Because my father didn't. He almost lost his house here in the city. I had to bail him out. He didn't plan for any of that stuff. He didn't help my sister. He didn't help. He's a nice guy, but he just never did any of that planning. And I don't want to burden my children when I'm older, for example, with bills or to ask them to pay my rent or any of that. I want to be able to pass something down to them so they go, wow, thank you. You know, I've built a legacy during my time here for my family. I was able to establish a future generation. Whether they're going to be good or not, there's only so much we could do. But I have no college education. I hope to put them through college and so forth and really get to that next level as a family, build legacies like some of these other families. Now, in terms of talking with my wife, luckily I have a good woman. She's always understood. She's also an entrepreneur. It's a big one. And that's what I was talking about earlier is like, hey, you have to reevaluate your relationship. If you're so hungry and you want so much for yourself, but person B is just holding you down like a weight, that has to cut. And it might be the hardest cuts you make, but that cut just needs to go, man. And it's like, you know, I've cut a few girls back in the day, I like that were just, I felt were distraction. If someone's a distraction, get them out. If your friends are a distraction in your life, not even your wife, get them out. If someone's trying to tell you, why do you do so much? Why are you doing this talk show? You have a good pension coming up when you retire. You know, you have this and that. Cut those people out. Keep going because, you know, you don't want someone to blow smoke on you and blow your fire out. There are people I've cut out. So many are jealous all the time of success. Even today, like I feel it, you know, I'm about energy and so forth. No matter what, I've had to cut a lot of friends out. And the wife, luckily, is on the same page. And if she's not, you have to have a communication and understanding.
Yeah.
You know, someone once told me, you have to list out your goals on a sheet of paper, both of you, and write them down. What do you want? And then compare that list, you know, without telling each other. And then you see what you guys want. Are you both compatible? And you do it as like a little exercise. And if you're not financially compatible, everything in the relationship is based on finances in marriage. That can crumble quick.
I totally understand where you're coming from there. As I've grown up, I've learned that these are the type of conversations a lot of people don't have. It's almost like if a couple gets together and they say they want to have a child, but they don't really think through, okay, how is this going to work for us? Where are we going to live? Who's going to make the money? Who's going to stay on whatever? They just kind of say, we'll do it and we'll figure it out. Yeah. And you kind of have to have those difficult conversations early on because you don't want that to come back to bite you 5 years, 10 years down the line. Or someone throws it back in your face, you changed, you're not the person that I married, whatever it is, because you've maybe taken a different path. But communication has been key, and I totally get where you're coming from there. If we both understand now this is where we're both going, being married to an entrepreneur is a big one because you both get it. You both see the hustle.
Exactly. Let me ask you just a question. You know, if you have a business partner, Michael, and one business partner wants to have 100 customers, but you want to have 1,000 customers, right? You're already at what? At an argument or at a standstill because your vision is different, right?
Right.
If your business partner, let's say you open up a coffee shop and your idea, someone asked me about a coffee shop. That's funny I brought it up. Your idea is to have one little coffee shop while your business partner's like, no, I want to be the next Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
You're too far off.
Yeah.
That's important.
Like that has to be, it sounds so simple, but that has to be hammered out early on. It's like, hey, we're going to get into this joint venture. Where are we going with this? Well, I'm good with just one and then I'm happy, right? Well, actually I want 50 or I want to grow it bigger to something I can't even see. And if we're already on the wrong page, hey, this is, because like CFO, CEO has the vision. They promote the vision, they carry it out, they motivate the people. CFO, make sure that thing actually happens. The operations guy that says, okay, this is your vision. I'm the Tim Cook to your Steve Jobs. Steve, this is what you want. I'm going to make it happen effectively.
And that's where my skill is operations. I've been the CEO of so many different companies, but ultimately, you know, and again, I don't talk up myself that much. So some said did millions. There's people that are doing like way more, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I'm really good when I really dive in. I think a good trait to know you have it or you don't is I study the crap out of everything. I make sure I plan 20 steps ahead, and you always got to plan ahead. Another thing, just to add to the relationships part, I think it's very important. I learned later on in life, you have to look at the family you're marrying into as well. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can't control who your brothers, sisters are, or the family, but you could look at the parents. If the parents have a happy foundation, are together, or even two, they're together, whatever, they're a good, happy family, and they raise that kid right, you're going to kind of get a sense of how you're going to get treated potentially in that environment. It's not always the case, but if, for example, you married into a family and that family is very successful, and I'm not saying you go into the route of, being a gold digger or whatever, right? but it's like, if that family's successful, very likely, ultimately, that success is going to carry over into your relationship one way or another, whether they help you out or not. It's tough to tackle on the world when you're either both at a disadvantage in some way or another. It sucks. Could be love there, but it just depends what your end goal is. If you want more, climbing from the very bottom is extremely difficult, and that's something to note. So when my kids come of that age, and that's my biggest fear, right, is I don't care what happens to me. It's always your kids are the most protected. I want them to understand that the next generation has to marry into some very happy or very successful family as well. I think that's important.
We haven't even gotten into your businesses yet, but there's one thing that you brought up that I want to ask you about, because this has been a big thing I've seen around here as time has gone on, is that as a family becomes successful financially, resources, whatever, you naturally want to pass it on to your kids, because especially if you've come from nothing and you know what it's like to have nothing, it's like, I want to make sure my kids don't live, the life that I have, want them to be in a much better spot there. But how do you balance that between doing too much, where almost like it's an entitled thing? Oh, I grew up with X, so I don't have the same amount of work ethic. How do you work through that kind of a difficult maze, which I've seen a lot of venture capitalists around here sort of go through?
So the question was how do you not spoil the kids? Is that the summary of it?
Pretty much. Like, you want to make sure that they're taken care of, but you don't want to give them too much where they grow up knowing, oh, dad's always got money, so I don't have to. So
a few things. When I was young, I earned it myself. No one gave me crap. Sometimes people tell me that when on my down day, like if something's not going right, I'm like, they're like, hey, you everything on you is you earned it. Like everything you have, the houses, this, that, you earned it. Don't forget that. You know what I mean? Like the work you've put in, you earned it. And I think you got to remind yourself. And it could be in little things, right? When you're giving a kid everything, it's probably not good if you want them to strive for it. There's a guy, I don't know him, but it's Patrick Bet-David. You know who he is. And he's funny story with him. Someone I know knew him and dated him in Glendale, and supposedly pulled out a gun on him. That's how crazy it was. Armenian thing.
Oh, Armenian.
Yeah.
On PBD or
on PBD. I don't know if it's true or not. This is what I heard, but
if this gets caught by Valuetainment, they can ask him on one of their shows.
Yeah, that'd be funny if it is. They actually reached out to me. They're like, "Hey, you want to be part of Valuetainment?" His brother or cousin or something, and he followed them, etc. And I said, "No, I'm going to do my own podcasting." He mentioned something, how he rewards his kids, that I've been actually implementing. And that goes back to, hey, whatever you want to know is out there, right? People like that and YouTube and so forth. So before I give a gift to my kids, I ask them to read, 10 pages, 10 minutes, whatever. So just that they know that's important. I think he has something along the lines of, you got to read daily to do anything. And that's where he gets all this content from, right? He's reading these books and he's manipulating it, and his brain has so many ideas. Personally, I'd love to read more. I don't have as much time, I think, and that's an excuse. But overall, I think if you spoil your kids, you're going to be in trouble with them. Another thing is, when my wife's younger brother was young, I made sure he wasn't on drugs. So I took him to 6th Street. I said, hey, let's walk around. I say, and I'm from the city. I've seen it all too, right? In 30 years living here. I took him to 6th Street. I'd say, hey, here's $20. Tell him about your life or your kind of like we're talking here, your drug use and this and that, scared the shit out of him, right? To this day, from what I know, he doesn't do it. You never know fully, but that's one thing. So you got to make sure your kids aren't on drugs. That's the most important. You reward them with work. They have to work for it. You still, at the end of the day, give them stuff. But I don't think kids nowadays, I don't think they're as mature at a certain age as they were back then. You know what I mean? Another thing of mine is if my kids, when my kids grow up, they're going to be, I want them to work in the city or in a job where it deals person to person. Because, you know, working at the Good Guys and the Best Buys and all these other jobs, I've done pizza places. The hustle mentality was there, but also understanding different personalities, different cultures, different races. Mm-hmm. This is all important, and the work ethic. Like, not everyone comes from a nice glam house if you live in your rich bubble, right? Mm-hmm. So
that's funny because there was I like the advice that you're giving about how you raise your kids. Like, there was some extreme examples. I think Daniel Craig it was who said, "Hey, my kids aren't getting squat. Yeah. Everything I have is for me and my wife." Or Warren Buffett, I think, said, I'm going to give my kids enough that they can kind of go off their own, but not too much where they're going to blow it. And it's important because, you know, once he goes, he wants to know that at least it's not just going to be all frivolous.
You know, these guys with their billions and millions, I also know how they kind of operate just from understanding. They all have these foundations, right? And they act like they all give their money away, but they don't. They give it to the foundation. The foundation in general has employees in a group of people, and usually their families are members of the foundation, so they continue to get paid. It's a big tax loophole. You're donating to a foundation. The foundation could write it off for X amount. Yes, you give a certain percent off every year, but they're keeping the money.
That's how the scam works.
Well, it's not. You know, it's not a scam. It's the way it is. Like, so when you gotta like read through the lines because people print stuff, and some of these guys own the newspaper, right? So they're not gonna. So when they print stuff and they go, oh well, I'm donating all my net worth. Where are you donating it to? You know, you got to ask these questions. And anytime anyone's trying to tell you something, you should always ask the question like, is this true or whatever it is? They donate to their own foundations, and those foundations donate to some charities. But in the meantime, on the payroll is their family, like the Hearst, you guys will comment back, foundation. That's the biggest one, or the Hershey Foundation.
Hershey or William Randolph Hearst?
I made one of those. I forgot. But that's like one of the biggest foundations today, you know, and overall, that's how they move money around, you know?
How about that? Now, it doesn't surprise me because I get it. As I get older, I learn about how like the tax code is really centered around businesses. Yep. It's the design that if you create businesses, we don't want you to fail as the government. So all these tax loopholes are built for that. But if you grow up in an area where you're good with the standard deduction, and that's all you know, you kind of think that the bigger players are getting away with murder, but they really are. You know, they're playing the system for what it actually is.
Playing the game. They're playing the game, and the government's the same. You know, you say what, you know, money is funneled through every way out there, and it's like, it's just, the rich are rich for a reason, and they have good people behind them, a good team, and that's really the core of any business, is having a good team, whether it's from your sales team, from your customer service team, your finances, your advisors, et cetera, you know.
I mean, I totally believe it. And some people, I mean, we'll get just a tad into politics right here, but some people talk about why are we giving Ukraine like $85 billion? And like, you do realize we're not just delivering a suitcase full of $100 bills and saying, have at it. Yeah. It's actually weapons that we're giving to them that companies like Raytheon say, hey, guess what? You give those to Ukraine, we're going to buy some more from you.
Trust me, there's stuff there too, probably. I'm telling you.
I believe it.
Yeah, there's that amount of money, you know. So I think it was like Assange, Julian Assange, he said, hey, the Iraq war, why were we there for 20 years? It's a good way to funnel billions of dollars of money into something. And I don't know how it all works. I'm not saying it happens. But when you're writing off that amount of money every month or every year or whatever it is, who knows where it leads to? We just all pay into it.
It's all funny money at the end of the day. So, you know, I get where people are coming from with their frustrations, but if you actually knew, and I don't know, but if you see how things work behind the scenes, it's like, wow.
Something's up.
Exactly.
Listen, and here's the thing. I've been in the Bay Area so many years, you know, I've seen the politicians and, you know, my sister's friends with Willie Brown's girlfriend, who's an ex-city mayor. And I've seen them. They all enjoy a good lifestyle, you know what I mean? And the politicians out here do, and I've seen them at nightclubs and so forth. And I don't know where they get the money, man. I don't know where they get the money, but get the money.
That's a whole separate conversation. That could be a whole episode in itself. But so let's get back to what was your first business that you actually started, your official business here?
Yeah, so the first one was, I was in either high school or college at the time, probably like late high school, early college. eBay just got around, which is crazy. That's how old I am. And I was like, listen, I'm going to sell something. I don't know what to sell. I started selling PlayStation controllers. So I would drive down. There was a company called Just Deals in San Jose. They would be a distributor for Logitech controllers and Logitech keyboards and this and that. And I went online. I was like, what could I sell that I could buy for like $20 or $10, right? If I have $500, I could get 50 of it. But if I sell 50 of it, I could take that 500, make 1,000, right? If I sell it from $10 to $20. Now, of course, as a business guy, I didn't know fees and shipping and this and that, so you learn all that along. But I would buy PlayStation controllers and then keyboards, and then I'd go on eBay and I would just dump them. I would sell them for double or triple the price. It became so great that I rented my own house when I was young, and I have some funny stories with that house. And out of the garage in that house, I would print the labels, run downstairs into the garage, package. DHL driver would come by, pick them up, and sell them. And that was my first business. And from there, it turned into, I would sell that. Then I was like, what can I do more? So I started importing stuff from China. I imported those little motorcycles that kids had, those 49cc pocket bikes.
The pocket bikes, okay.
Yeah, if you probably got some, you got them from me or someone else that I know. And I was importing like containers of them after saving up money, or one container to 2 containers and so forth, until something happened on the streets of an accident and San Francisco outlawed it. So then I dumped that business, was selling it on eBay. Then I imported from there infrared saunas. So I was like, you know what, I'll create a website. Longevity Saunas. And Joe Rogan talks about infrared technology now on his podcast. And I had these saunas. It was called Longevity Saunas. And I would sell them. The problem was the shipping. The Chinese would not pack them. And when I say the Chinese, they're made in China. They would not pack them well enough. And so I would have to, like, before each shipment, drive down to this warehouse that I was renting a potential space for in Hayward. And out of a buddy's company, his dad started a big company. And I would package them with insulation. I'd have insulation dust all over my hands and then probably my body, just so they don't get damaged. And it was a mess. Sold a lot of them. And then I wanted out of that business because of damage. So I lost my freight contracts. That's a big deal. Freight is a big industry because they're like, hey, we can't keep writing you or keep taking your stuff and paying a claim on freight. And wood gets damaged easily, especially those infrared panels. They're thin and all that.
Wow.
But I'll tell you, there was a funny story with that one. So when I sold it off, I got hustled. There's a video on my channel about that. There's a kid I knew for many years. This kid freaking also got into the sauna business. He bought like 5 saunas from me. Then he bought like 10. And then while I was in China, he's like, hey, can you get someone in your warehouse to sell them all? I'll cut you a check. I need them today. I got this big buyer. I said, sure. Picked them up and the check bounced.
Man.
Yeah. So it's a big amount. But no, I got my money back.
Jesus. So that's, especially nowadays with drop shipments and people trying to make money off of eBay. One of the big things with that, and you were doing this, how many, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
What is the type of capital you would need to secure it in order to be able to invest in a business where you're going directly to China, you're ordering in bulk, and that you have to have enough on hand in case either things don't sell or insurance? How the numbers work there?
So with eBay, you don't need that much capital. If you're really hoping to get in the business, everything starts small. If you don't have capital, don't think, oh, I don't have the money. I mean, I'm sure people have stuff laying around the house that they could sell to start a business, right? Mm-hmm. So the capital with eBay, I probably started with a couple grand and raised that into over 100 easy. My company that I took to 10 million started with $10,000. Okay. So overall, it's in the mind, man. People limit themselves with a monetary figure. If you have $1,000, you could buy, say, 10 items. If sell that 10 items, then buy $2,000 worth, right?
Right.
So eBay, I didn't start much. Like I said, I bought like 500 controllers or $500 worth back then. That 500 turned into 1,000. That it's the numbers game. That 1,000 turns into 2, eventually into 4, and so forth. And then you manage how you're spending it, right?
Right.
When you're young, I wasn't. Well, my friends were getting high and getting drunk at the nightclub, and it's facts. I was up working, making sure, I was at home, making sure the next order labels printed, whatever. I was building a website back then. How does a kid like me builds a website where back then there was no Shopify platforms? Everything is just so easy today that if you don't take advantage of it as an entrepreneur, someone that's trying to improve your family, net worth, well-being, you just take care of your parents, whatever it may be. It's so easy today. There's just so many more tools. And if I could have done it then, you guys could do it now and just take advantage of what's out there. There's just a myriad amount of information out there and tools, So
like, for example, with the controllers, how do you purchase them at a price where you can resell them for a profit when you take out all the fees? If someone can say, well, I could just go to the store and buy it.
So, my rule is 3x on a product. If there's no 3x, like if I can't buy it, if I could buy it, say for $5, I have to at least sell it for $15. Okay, if I could buy it for $10, I need to be able to at least sell it for $30. Because eBay is going to take a cut. I think it's 10% or something like that.
It's 12 now.
12, okay.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. When I did it was like 5 or 4. It was probably somewhere lower. Then on top of that, PayPal's going to take a cut, right? So then you got PayPal. They're double dipping. And then on top of that, you're shipping. So in eBay back then, you could charge more for shipping, right? People were like lowering the price of their goods, but charging more and claiming handling. That's not technically a kosher thing to do. But that's what they were doing. And for me, it became a way to understand a product. I would really need to see money in a product. So that led to, like, eventually I dumped the keyboards. I was like, why am I making $20 or on a controller, a keyboard, or $10 or whatever? How many do I have to sell, right? You could always calculate how many you have to sell to make 100 or 1,000,000.
Right.
And then at the same time, I got into welding equipment. I think after the saunas or generators. Actually, I got into generators first. There was the Hurricane Katrina. Yeah, remember that?
The New Orleans one?
Yeah.
Remember that one.
So I was like, damn, they need power out there. So I imported a couple containers of generators, shipped them out there, sold them quick. The problem was, again, Chinese-made generators, engines, were leaking. So that was almost a disaster.
Wow.
I took care of as many clients as I could, refunded them, shipped them, but shipping a 500-pound generator back and forth, or them asking to have a mechanic out that same day to fix it, that's where you need that margin of room for product, right?
Yeah.
You need to make sure that if you sell it, it goes down. You're going to be able to cover the cost of replacement. So eventually I got out of that, and at the same time, someone on eBay was selling welding equipment. And I was like, welding, what the fuck is... Can I do that?
You're good.
Okay, yeah. I was like, what the hell is this, like MIG welder or TIG welder or stick welder? I had no idea about it. And then I'm like, I could get that. I was like, that's what happens when you don't limit yourself. You don't know where the threshold is, right?
True, yeah.
So I imported a lot of welding equipment. And today we sell it to Home Depot and Lowe's. And we sell it to Amazon and through eBay, although not much on eBay anymore. It's too diluted. We created our own brand. When I was part of it, people go, oh, why are you on YouTube? I did YouTube 10 years ago on my welding equipment, or like 12 years ago. There's a video of me with no hair almost on YouTube advertising welding equipment because I knew that was a big avenue. If I had done like an unboxed therapy and reviewed that instead 10 years ago, I would have been way richer.
Who knows where you'd be right now? Oh man.
So that's kind of the thing. But if you're going to get into a product, you need to know your margins. Otherwise, don't get into anything.
So how did welding equipment, like you said, come out? It just you saw it on eBay and said, let me look into that. I have no clue how I'm going to do this.
I saw it. It was a box. I don't know. I don't know how to weld to this day. Okay. I've done it. I tried it. It's not my thing. I've done trade shows. We've had distributors in Germany, in Brazil, in Mexico. When I was focused on that company, it was doing good. It needs a revive, being honest, because I'm focused somewhere else. And that kind of goes back to how do you juggle all these things?
Yeah.
Everything will crack, right? So I simply looked at margins. I didn't care what the product was. I didn't care the passion. I'm not passionate about welding, and that's probably why it's not my number one business. But I looked at margins, and I think in life you have to always look at margins. If I was to give your listeners advice on starting a business, I wouldn't go into inventory-based businesses at all. So if you're looking at starting a business, don't do inventory because it's hard to manage. There's defects, there's quality control, there's storage, there's shipping damage, there's shipping claims, there's just so many additional components into a business when you have inventory. Not saying it's bad or good.
Right.
It's just that it's too much. And you're now having to deal with X amount more. You have to hire people to pack it. You have to have ship it. You have to have managers. You have to manage a warehouse. You need a bigger space. There's just so much versus like something like this. This is why some of these guys are so successful. You could do this out of a bedroom. And,
you could.
And there are guys that are doing that and talking about business when maybe they have not done a business. And I've seen it on YouTube, you know?
Yeah. So like when you say inventory based, you mean on hand inventory. You don't mean drop ship. Like I'm the middleman. You order through me. I fulfill the order from China. They ship it to you. Kind of thing.
So be careful with that too. Okay. So I got screwed with Amazon big time and almost sued Amazon, but you can't sue a giant like that. They just have lawyers on payroll. When you get the way we would supply, say Amazon is we would ship out to Amazon's customers and from our warehouse, they would prime into their drop locations for next day delivery or whatever, right? But when you're doing that type of business, Amazon has all these things in their contract that I didn't know about, and a lot of people don't. You could look it up on the internet. They'll all of a sudden, they owe you, let's say 50 grand. And this happened in my experience where it was a couple $100,000. And they're like, oh, your balance is 30 grand because we deducted these fees. Oh, you checked off to not receive the product back if it's damaged. So all of a sudden, I had Amazon owing me money, and then they come back to me and they go, you owe us money. And I go, wait a minute.
Wow.
I don't owe you 30 grand. You owe me 200 something grand. Here's the list of all these open orders that you haven't paid for. How do I owe you all? Oh, well, these are part of this 10% fee, this 10%. And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. You know? So you got to be careful with those businesses because you're trusting one big entity, and that big entity's focus is only on them. I'm not saying it's not possible. I just personally would never, ever, ever get into a business like that again.
Gotcha. I mean, it makes sense because if they have a monopoly on that type of platform, they can make the rules and you're sort of at their mercy.
Not only that, they monopolized and made their own products.
Yeah.
Right? How many sellers were killing it, selling some type of cable, and they go, damn, the sales are good on this level. Amazon Basics, boom.
Amazon Basics,
now you're out. You think they're going to promote you realistically over the search over Amazon Basics? No way. They know what they're doing. It's not by accident.
And they can afford to sell it at a lower price than you can because they have so much behind them.
They'll kick you out. They will take over your supplier. I've seen it in my business where we've been taken over. When we entered the welding game, there was another bigger company. We're at a trade show. These CEOs of these public companies are coming up to me going, how did you get into the business? Same way you asked. They're shocked, right? They don't understand it. I'm young back then.
Yeah.
And I don't know welding. And you're in the Bay Area? In San Francisco, you started a welding company? What? That's unheard of. Like they're in Indiana, Iowa, or whatever. Like Ohio.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And the thing is, it's difficult, but at the same time, they'll kick you out, and they'll take your supplier, that supplier that came up to us, said, hey, we don't want you selling to them. We don't want them to build a big brand. They monopolize it. So all of a sudden I had to source my product somewhere else. That delayed me 6 months into new branding, new videos, new marketing materials, new website. You got to upload these products. It's a lot of work, right? Inventory based is a lot of work. So I don't recommend any business ever to anybody that I give my mouthpiece to in their ear say, hey, start a business, focus on this. I just don't. There's just so many ways to make money without it and scale it even more.
So pretty much if you were to start a business now, you would not do the controller thing again. You
Hell
would
no.
not, because the market's too saturated with people, correct?
I don't even care about the market. I just would not do it because it's inventory based. That's just me.
Gotcha.
And I would not do any business that's inventory based because it takes too much. You look, in a business, you still have your salespeople, you still have your accountant, you still have your customer support, your website, your marketing. Then add all this inventory mumble jumble into it. That's an unnecessary component to bill. Then you're at the mercy of the manufacturer, okay? So, and then you're at the mercy of the government. The government, no one knows this, right? You guys don't know this. The government is a silent business partner. What the hell has it done for your business except you paying taxes every time? Nothing. So if you're very successful at the end of the year, you're giving them money. And they're happy for it. And yes, they provide safety in certain ways and so forth. I'm not against the government. I still love this country. But overall, they're a silent business partner of yours. You need to understand that. There's some guy that's constantly taking everything you do and they're distributing it out, and you don't even know that. You don't plan for that. There are people that have gotten in trouble financially because they've made so much money and they forgot and they think, oh, I'm making 10 grand a month. No, you're not making 10 grand a month. You're making 6 grand or 5 grand a month because you're paying 50% at the end of the year to the IRS. So if you're spending 5 grand a month or 6 grand a month thinking you're making 10, you're in trouble at the end of the year. You have nothing to pay them. Now you're paying interest. So overall, I wouldn't do it. It's just inventory based. Don't do it. There's just so many businesses, you could get into. And it seems weird because people are like, I got to have something tangible to sell. No, you don't.
It's the old school way of thinking.
Yeah.
So what was the business that put you over the top? Was that your $10 million sales business?
Yeah, it's my luxury travel business. I think I did the best on. It was selling airline tickets to first class and business class. We focused on high net worth customers. Jeremy Piven is a client.
Is he?
Yeah, we have others. I don't know all the names because I don't deal with them direct. Right. But there's been people I've messaged on Instagram sometimes like, hey, you're a client of ours. Want to thank you. They reply. It's pretty cool. I've since separated. I had a business partner and that business didn't work out. Started my own called the Travelers Agency. And now we're focusing on, I'm excited. It's kind of like a rebirth because during the pandemic, we went from a $10 million company to like a $1 million company because no one's flying, right?
Yeah,
it's international.
Exactly.
So I was like, Jesus. But afterwards, rebranding and restarting, got my own team, people that I could trust. I fired people I don't trust. In the past, I think as an entrepreneur, and still today, I think highly of people without realizing that not everybody's a nice person or loyal or honest. And I give them that chance for too long. And I'm starting to learn to cut out who is not with it within a month or two. Before that would be a 6 month, a year process before they would, try to get unemployment or sue me or do whatever,
I've seen it where it's like if people don't understand why you're doing it, they'll work for your money. But if they believe in what you're doing and then they see the good thing, then they work for you and the vision. Yeah. And it can be difficult to figure it out sometimes because on the one hand, you're trying to grow the business and there's demands, there's deadlines, whatnot. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's a culture too that you're trying to bring people in. Yeah. And
it's difficult here, man.
Oh, I believe it.
Out here, it's the worst. In my opinion, the Bay Area, I'm not saying people in the Bay Area are lazy. They're just too short-sighted. They think, if you look at a standard resume nowadays, it's like 1 or 2 years each job, and they're constantly hopping. When I was doing trade shows for the welding company, I was like, how long have you been with this business? 26 years. 26 years? I can't keep somebody here for like X, and I'm paying them a decent amount more than they're getting paid there. Of course, it's different areas, but, you gotta, the young generation, and me and this guy, there's another individual that I've known for 20 years, very successful. He's about to sell his company. I hope he sells it he's going to sell big, okay? But big. Mm-hmm. But me and him have these talks. It's not a podcast thing, but we both agree that the youth today, or even the entrepreneur today, is too impatient. Mm-hmm. They don't see that long-term commitment. Like you said it earlier in the podcast, you said, I'm here for the long run, 10 years. That's beautiful. I don't see people talking like that anymore. They're like, you know what? They don't appreciate me. I'm out. Right? That's like, I've had that so many times with everybody, or they want that like black belt in 2 years, right? In jiu-jitsu or judo or whatever. And they don't see that work of 10 years that someone puts in to get that belt, or they don't see the constant day and night that they're working, and the bills, having a $0 or $1,000 in my bank account. There's been so many times, I'm not going to lie, I'm not Mr. Rich here. There's been so many times where I personally cried thinking that I was done. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was done. I was like, holy shit, this is the worst I've been at in financials. And it hurts. And then there's another day. You know what I mean? So you got to like come out of it on top. I've never been the type that's just been, so lucky, et cetera. There's an example. I've had, let's say, $200,000 to my name years back. And a container from China came in. Something was wrong. I think they purposely sent a defective product to me where something's not plugged or something's not working in these welding machines. I sent that back thinking that they're going to repair it. They had my money, right? I wired them $100,000 or $200,000. They take the container back, and guess what? I never see from that company again. I cried. I said, holy shit, this ruined me. So at that point, I had to start over again with welding. And people will go through that as business. Your partner will steal, a company will steal from you, your employees will steal. You're going to mess up with contracts. You're going to mess up with things that you do. One thing I want to recommend to all entrepreneurs as well, never put your personal guarantee in. If you own an asset, like your parents may own a house in Hayward that you're going to collect, don't go into a contract and give yourself a personal guarantee, because you don't know what's going to happen with your business.
Yeah, exactly. And for anybody who's watching now, we're in October 28th, whatever. You just put out a video last week or early this week about peaking too soon. We were talking about the black belt guy who got it too soon, and then now what do I do with it? And it speaks directly to what we're talking about now. And you mentioned how a lot of people are impatient. I've seen that a lot here, and I've seen it. I don't think it's one person to blame. It's a sort of a cycle, but I see it in tech culture, which sort of enables it. You come here, you work 2 years, and now you want to get a better job. You go apply another company, the recruiter gets you because they want your talent.
Yep.
Now, what do we need to give you? I want this salary. I want this bonus. Done. Come over here. Okay.
Yep.
And then the worker repeats the cycle. And if it keeps going, then why would you change that if you're the impatient type? Because, hey, I can just go somewhere else and get a better job because they're going to pay me more. And it's
short thinking.
Exactly.
And eventually they end up without a job.
I know,
Yeah.
because maybe you price yourself out the market. But it's sort of been how a lot of these tech companies and startups work, is that we just need the best talent now instead of,
Well, you also got to understand, why is the recruiter so pushy, right? Because they get
They
20
get
to
their
30% on your pay in most cases. My wife worked before starting her own business in a tech recruiting company. She was good. If your salary is $25, they're getting $35 to your salary for up to a year or whatever. So they're getting like 20 to 30%. So their goal is to convince you to leave your job. That's what it is. And you're thinking that this is a tremendous opportunity when in fact you're not growing within the company and you're kind of job hopping. Some companies favor that, some don't. But in the end of the day,
Exactly. I mean, I was talking to somebody about this earlier about there's nobody in the future who's going to be a pilot. I mean, the pilots are down, 30,000, I think, in the industry, and it's only going to get worse. Same with police, fire, service jobs that used to be a guaranteed
welding
thing.
is a big one.
That's a good one too.
That's a good job.
These are good paying jobs that are still in demand, and nobody wants to apply for them anymore because they see, why would I want to do that when I could go to Google or fill in the blank company and get paid this same amount, work at home from my computer, or if I go and I get free food, bean bags, and nap pods, and free dry cleaning. Why would I want to go work over there?
Google spoiled the whole dynamic of workspace. It made it hard for real companies to compete with employees because there's so much offering there, and other companies have learned. It sucks. That's the nature of it. I mean, I love to provide a wonderful work environment, but ever since the pandemic, people just want to work from home too. And that has killed downtown San Francisco all the businesses. I feel so bad for all those businesses, versus the politics. And I did these videos on my channel as well about it, versus like Florida politics, where it's like he kept it all open, everything kept moving, and now tech companies are moving that way because people want to go out, they want to enjoy life. So
I mean, I totally get it. It's and on to be playing devil's advocate, I guess, if you're a tech company, you like, hey, I want my workers to be happier. So what do I have to give you to make you happy? But then the other side of it is, if you give too much, you may also say that this is the norm. This is the now bar. So if I go below that, I've already set the expectation. How do I pull back and say,
it's tough to give it back. It's there's that theory. You give 2 inches, you take 1 back. You both think that person thinks they're winning as well. Oh, they take it back, it's fine. But every time someone does that, they give you 2 inches, take 1 back, 2 inches, and before you know it, you're on the other side of the table. Do you know what I mean? And you're not even understanding that.
Right. And I've seen some of the best companies like Apple when they had Steve Jobs, or Southwest Airlines. It's like these companies were very strong in telling people why they did what they actually did. And people believed into it. They bought into it. They worked for the company and the vision. It wasn't about the money, because they were going to work happy, fulfilled. They were creating this bigger vision. And then if things go south, then it becomes, all right, well, I'm here for the paycheck. That's it. And then that's the sign where it's like, okay.
That clock in, clock out mentality is not a good mentality for any employee, et cetera. I've always, when I look to hire people, and we could discuss that mentality of clocking in early, and then clocking out, first, clocking in at the dot and clocking out first and not staying over, that gets you nowhere as well. If I was an employee of a company, I'd grind. I think people in companies need to see you grind, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're hiring someone, and that's what I look for when I hire people. Are they going to grind out and work? And I'm not saying work overtime and not get anything, but like, you want someone that has that same vision as you if they're going to be by your side.
It's like, and I understand that, and I see that, and I also am thinking about, if I'm the other side too, what if I do have a family, and literally they're the most important thing to me, I just need to make sure I pay the bills. And you get in the mindset of, okay, well, I do go here, I'm just here for the paycheck because my family is what's important to me. And that comes back to, like, most people who don't want to be entrepreneurs, they have that mindset. It's not bad, but it's about how do you still build a loyalty there too, even though these employees are here for the paycheck, because what's important to them is only their family, understandably.
I actually appreciate that lifestyle just as much as I appreciate an entrepreneur lifestyle. Like I mentioned earlier, there are people that are content with what they have. They're happier. Money doesn't make you happy. I think money, what it does is it amplifies who you are. Either you could be an unhappy person. If you have a lot of money, you're going to do really bad things with money. It just gives you more opportunity. It amplifies it. If you're a happy person, you're probably going to do great things with money. You're going to donate. You're going to travel. You're going to be happy. You're going to meet people, inspire them, whatever it is. But if you're miserable and you're a miserable millionaire, you're just a miserable millionaire.
I know. It's like, you can speak for this at Frontline. It's like the money doesn't buy you happiness. Past a certain point, I mean, once you have your bills paid and you're living a comfortable lifestyle, the money you make above that doesn't necessarily bring the same amount of value as it did when you didn't have a lot of money and you could barely pay the rent or not pay the rent at all. And
it might even bring you more heartache. It's people are attracted to certain things. Money is one of those things. Sex, violence for whatever reason, it's part of our nature. Sleep isn't necessary, right? Food.
Yes.
But money is up there, and it creates, I've seen people change because of it, friends. I've seen greed. I've seen families fight over it, etc. And it's unfortunate what it could do to a family or do to anybody. But at the same time, it's important to have. It just buys you a lot of opportunity in life, and it just doesn't make you a better person. So when I talk to people, the only thing I respect is a person that's on the grind. I don't respect a person that's rich. So when I meet someone that's rich, I don't care, because I met some really rich assholes. I didn't care if they're driving a Ferrari or whatever, or they get like 10 million a year they make, or whatever it is. It's like, I just respect the person that's like grinding it out. That to me is more shows about the character than how much is in, what's in your wallet's not what's inside you, kind of thing. So
I get it. Yeah.
So I'm like, hey man, that person, you know what? Bad luck, good luck. He's grinding it. She's grinding it out. Like, I respect that. It's not easy to do.
No, it's not.
Yeah. And there are people that are like really rich that are rude. I've met. Rude. They were rude to me. They're rude to others. They belittle people. I don't like that shit. So to me, I don't need to be friends with a person like that. I don't even care. I won't show any respect. You won't see me lick any toes or anything like that. I grew up, bro. If I tell you, I grew up tough, man. I didn't. I wasn't a punk, and I wasn't, a pushover. And I don't need to please anybody. Just tell someone something. I am who I am.
Exactly.
Yep.
Totally get it, man. Oh, we were talking about the work ethic and tech, and you appreciate the grind of people who come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to work hard. It's not about making big bucks necessarily, as much as I'm fighting for a vision, a cause here.
Yeah.
Which has been a big thing that, like I said, we don't really see a lot of anymore. The whole idea of you could work your rear end off and you're going to make it somewhere. Some people think that you can find the shortcut easier, or they get too caught up in the innuendo without realizing, hey, how do I actually do this? But again, another reason why having you on is so important to me is because, you've been there, you've done that, and you continue to do that now with all your current businesses. So with the travel company, it's still a thing, correct?
Yeah. I still have it. Flightslux.com is one of the websites. The Travelers Agency is another. It's in the works. It's only a few months old, but already we're doing pretty good. And hopefully next year, planning for that to do even better.
That's awesome.
So definitely is.
So with all your businesses here, especially like the last two, you don't start with like $50,000 or $100,000 or whatever. It's just I go into it, I started, and then we work through it.
So another thing you mentioned about inventory-based business, right? Mm-hmm. That's another thing I don't like about inventory is you have to buy something, so you have to have more capital.
Right.
So that's a good point to not go into maybe one of those and really research what are the most, recession-proof, pandemic-proof businesses, et cetera. And I think I have a video on that as well if anyone's interested. But you don't have to have much money. It's like if you start with a lot of money, there's a lot more potential to get more money back. Mm-hmm. It's like everything else. It's like going gambling. If you're going to bet $1,000, you could win $1,000, right? But if you bet 10, you're only going to win 10.
Right.
So yeah, it just means you're starting from floor 1 and you need to get to floor 99.
Right.
And versus floor 50, which is, let's say, 50 racks or $1,000.
So if somebody, let's say they're married, kids, whatever, they've had a comfortable life, but they want to start a business, and they say, you know what, I've always wanted to start a business doing fill in the blank, but I don't know if I have the time commitment or how are we going to pay the bills in between then, because I have to quit my day job in order to do that. Do you have any advice you can give for people who are in that spot? Yeah,
so it goes back to both of you have to be on the same page. This is what you're doing. There has to be a talk about it. I think, I try with my wife once in a week to have like a sit down to discuss things that are going on, whether it's our projects or our buildings that we're building and this and that. But you have to have that discussion. The other thing you're going to have to understand is you're going to get less sleep. That's really it. Because, if you have the kids and you have your job, well, after 5 o'clock, you're punching out. And depending on the type of business you have, from 5 to, 8 or 10 p.m. to 1 a.m., that's your new second job, and if you're not ready for that, don't do it.
Wow, it's important stuff, because a lot of people don't know what is the sacrifice going to look like there now. Yeah. So what's the next step now? What are you working on now? Because you also, actually, let's go back a little bit. You had mentioned, or I think I saw in your bio, you had taken what your proceeds were here and you've gotten into the real estate and financial or investment sector. Was that something you did after you started these businesses, or you kind of been dabbling in that for a while? So
with real estate, for whatever reason, I've always had a knack to improve what I have. That's like in my blood. Mm-hmm. And it's just me. I can't sit still. My mind's always on many different aspects, projects. I get hit up with business ideas all the time too. Like people come to me and said, can you open this here? Do you want to start this here? Not like every day, but it happens. At least 3 business ideas come out to 4 a year for me where I have to say no or maybe or look at it. I forgot the question. How funny is that?
So going back to how you invested in real estate.
Right. Okay, so real estate. Yeah, so when real estate came up, I've always, and as I mentioned, how I like to improve things, the cars, I've always remodeled the cars, not remodeled, but like pimped them out. Yeah. And real estate, every house that I've owned, including my first, I redid or remodeled it inside. And, to get into real estate, my first real estate purchase was the condo we kind of talked off camera about. I slept in the warehouse for 2 years or a year or something like that. And I was saving up money. I had my warehouse, I had my inventory business, I had my offices, and it was 7,000 square feet. I still have that place today. And I slept in there just to save money. I was tired of paying rent for someone else. And I said, I'm going to buy something. So I slept there. I showered at friends' houses and at my girlfriend's at the time, who's my wife now, and so forth. And I got in my first project. So it always, once you get your foot in the door, you do that. Today, I own several properties, fortunately, in the Bay Area. And currently building my headquarters office, which I talked to you about as far as a studio and a podcast, my own. I don't know what it's going to be
Cast.
I've made it's someone created, one of my employees created the Cats podcast on Instagram, and it pops up like, do you want to follow it from my personal? And I'm like, what is this? And I was like, oh, that was him. He created it. There's no content on it yet. I have some ideas, but it's probably going to be very similar to this type of show. Obviously, you're going to have to come on. And I'm building a warehouse right now. I took a warehouse that's like 2,700 square feet, and we doubled the square feet. So we took a value of, say, $1 million to $2 million in square footage. You'll see it one day if you're interested.
Absolutely.
And it's 2 floors. It's really nice. I can't wait to finish that project. The pandemic has slowed down so many things for me. The funny thing is, that project has taken so long as well, and people have asked on the channel, like, what's going on? Listen, the pandemic had a lot of financial burdens on many people, including myself. But at the same time, my contractor also has had some issues. So now he was staying there for a while, and I let him, and I'm okay with that. I help out. He's an ex-veteran, et cetera. So it's like, we have a love-hate relationship because he's not building right away, but he's there when I need him.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on, because you're in real estate, even buying in the Bay Area? I mean, you have the capital that you could actually do it, but for the average person here trying to say, how can I afford 1.5 million for that house in Dublin that's from 1970 that needs a lot of work? Like, how does that?
Yeah. So nothing's impossible in my mind, right? If you really want a house, that's all you need to think about. That goes back to what I said earlier. You need to obsess over something. I don't even think about something. I obsess over it. It's in my phone. It's in my pictures. It's in my mind. It's in vision. If you're picturing yourself living somewhere, you need to have that. Like, I pictured while talking to you right now, the house I'm going to have one day, and watch, I'll have it, which is kind of crazy. So it's like The Secret, the book. It's kind of very similar to that, but you have to obsess over it. It's tough to buy it, but if there's a means, there's a way, or if you really want it, it will happen. So my advice is for home flippers. I've seen some home flippers recently. They're in crap, right? Because the 8-9%, we're going to hit a 10% interest rate. I had a video. I predicted it. I predicted it. I had a video like 6 months ago or so. Sometimes said 10% interest rates coming, and I think it's going to hit after the elections. So overall, if you're going to be into, say, home flipping, or if you're getting your first property as investment, let's talk about that. We'll talk about how you get the money after, right? Get the bottom, cheapest, crappiest house in the best area. That's my number one goal. It needs to be dirt. It doesn't even matter if the windows close all the way. I don't care, because what you're really buying is land, and you're really buying opportunity in that land. If you ever want to sell it, it's going to appreciate if it has a good school district. Now, what I mean best neighborhood, it's best school district, because someone's going to want to buy it. They won't care. They'll remodel it, et cetera. That's been always my strategy for purchasing. So the other thing is I look by square footage in what area. So for example, if Burlingame, which is nearby, has a $2,000 square foot price, but Millbrae right next to it is at $1,000, after all the Burlingame houses sell and so forth, it's going to bleed into Millbrae. So Millbrae is going to come up to $1,200, $1,300. It may not be $2,000, but it's going to be close. And if you're buying in at $800 a square foot, and you know that the appreciation is going to be X amount of square feet at a certain time, it's a good investment. Any investment, in my opinion, in the Bay Area for real estate is a solid retirement investment if you could hold on to the property. Now, how do you get the money? If you're young, and you could say get a duplex, rent one, and live in the other, and be careful. San Francisco rent laws are the worst laws. I could tell you the funniest story that happened with that, where I went to small claims court recently for that. But if and he didn't win, by the way.
I believe it.
Yeah. If you could rent one and buy one, that's great, because part of it is paying off your mortgage. Now, where people in real estate get caught is they're thinking everything is peachy and everything's going to go according to plan. But what if your tenant says, hey, I can't pay you, and he's using San Francisco rent law as an example to not pay, or even the COVID, and you're still having to pay the mortgage, right? Somehow. So now you could be really upside down. So in the peachy world, and I made this like video, is a vacation home a good idea or a good investment? It's actually a terrible investment. It's a good idea maybe if you love it or enjoy it, your family enjoys it, you pass it down, but you could sustain it. In reality, you're paying X amount of money into something that you use only a certain amount of time. If you're renting something or you're buying properties and they're paying you, in a good world, everything's going smooth. But in the real world, like today's world, they could stop paying you, and what are you going to do? So my advice is always buy the cheapest possible place at entry-level prices. If you're a first-time home buyer and the Bay Area market's like 700, 800,000 as a median price, you want to be right there. You want to be right below or right there. You don't want to go 1.2 million.
Right. Because
then your house is first to sell anywhere. If you look in the Sunset, for example, the Sunset neighborhood, I have a place out there. You buy a house anywhere under $1 million, you're set. Like even in 5 years, no matter what's going to happen, it's still going to be 1.3, 1.4, whatever it is. You buy a house at 1.8 million, that's a little bit risky, right? Because that's on the higher end in the Sunset. As far as having the money, I told you I lived in the warehouse and I saved. Yeah. You have a mom, you have a dad, they have an extra bedroom, go with your girlfriend and live there for a year or 2 years, save up your down payment. You know what I mean? That's what you got to do. You got to sacrifice. You don't go out and eat as much. You don't go buy crap that you wear one time and put in your, place. Work a second job. Listen, if I was grinding, sometimes I don't understand people. How do they allow themselves to get a certain situation? Yes, there's drugs that mess you up, which I said in the beginning, don't ever do drugs. My wife and I almost got in the biggest argument because I wouldn't smoke weed. Surprisingly how it is. Because that's how crazy it was. She's like, you're boring, this and that. She'll come on the podcast and people like her, but she'll kill me. I never did it. Like, I don't want to be distracted. And alcohol, I'll do a little bit. That's another thing. People, my mom is a big alkie. So that's a very, and especially that's where I get the anger from. So for me, alcohol and drugs are like, you have to control. But you could save so many ways. And I never understood people that don't do more. Like, you could drive an Uber at night. You could work your day. I met someone, I was in Seattle for some meeting. I flew back at 6 a.m., my flight, or 5 a.m. I'm in a car at 5 a.m. and it's some guy from Afghanistan. He got to come here because he was doing translation for the army over there, he told me, in this Uber ride. So asylum, because they took out who was helping them. He's like, I was like, you're working this early? And he's like, yeah. He's like, my other job starts at 8. I'm like, oh, it's cool. It's 4 a.m. You're grinding it out. He's like, yeah. See, I respect that. I'm like, holy moly, this guy's going to get somewhere. So to you want to own that house, go drive an Uber at freaking X amount of time from 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. Yeah, you're going to have to sleep less. No excuses. You want it or not. See how you could sell something. See how you could leverage something. See how you could rent to buy. That's a big option. I know someone that bought in Hillsborough recently told me, barely got in, but they did a rent to buy contract. They signed it. It happened. He was under $2 million of 10 years ago or so, which is like incredible, right? Yeah. But under $2 million in Hillsborough. I was like, wow. He's like, yeah, it was a rent to buy. I was like, that's great.
To get that in the contract. And I see a lot of people, and I get it. It's like, if you want a house that's like 1.5 million because it's the good schools, whatever, you technically need about $300K to put the down payment on it. And most people see that number like that's just beyond comprehension now. San Mateo County, I think they said a while ago that to even afford the medium household income, or to even afford a medium house, your median income has to be about $300K.
Yeah.
Which blows people's mind, especially if you're not from the Bay Area. That $300,000
It's tough. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not saying this is easy. It's incredible. It's gonna get worse. So much money was printed. It's gonna be even more money. You're gonna have to do more to get more. That's really the gist of it. You got to do more to get more. If you do what you're doing today and you're not doing more, you're not going to get more money. Yeah. And it sucks because it's. I feel for people. Like my wife's brother just bought a place in San Jose for $1 million. It's about 1,200 square feet or whatever it is, and it's not. He had to remodel it. Took on the remodel himself to save money. He was literally nailing the floor and this and that. Also does jiu-jitsu. He's really good. You know, I'm proud of him, and him and his girlfriend, and they're now engaged. They bought. Very proud of them, but it was tough for them. They saved up for years to get that $80,000 to $90,000 saved up, and they both work, and they're both in tech, and they, I don't know if they put 10% down, which is the bare minimum, but there's so many different ways to get a loan as well than your conventional way. In terms of the big banks, you got to find some good brokers that are going to be able to move puzzles. That's one way to get qualified. Yeah. You know, there are loans still out today, believe it or not, based on business, and you could, based on your business income statements. So there are brokers that will be able to loan you based on a statement. Another way to qualify, right? A friend of mine, not really a friend anymore, but someone I've grew up with as well. He's very successful, has Ferraris and this and that. He's good guy. I'm not going to say his name, but he would always buy a house, and he would get an interest-only loan that qualifies him for a cheaper down payment, not a cheaper down payment, but a cheaper monthly payment, which qualifies him more as a qualified applicant for a loan, knowing that he still has a good income. And then what he would do is he's like, I'm not going to live here for more than 5 years. This interest-only rate lock is on like 7 years. He's like, but I'm out of here. I'm going to wait till the market appreciates. And with real estate, if you're married, I think it's up to $500,000 you carry over tax-free. Again, guys, check with your people, but basically what he was doing is he would move in. He bought a condo here first. He sold the condo, took out $300K, rolled it into his house, second house, remodeled that, lived there for less than 5 years, sold it for another $500K on top. So now he has $800K tax free. Moved into his next house for 2 years, remodeled that. His dad was a contractor. Flipped it for another $300-400 whatever profit. And then again, now he's living in Hillsborough in a $5 million house, you know, and it's because he was able to collect all this residual income from all his property appreciation. So when you're buying a property, I always say bet on the appreciation. You know, that's probably the best investment. I talk to my wife all the time is real estate. Forget all these businesses. Who cares? You have a business or you're an entrepreneur. In reality, you know who the first millionaire was in the country or what business he was in?
Was that Rockefeller?
Nope, it wasn't Rockefeller. It was some German guy, real estate. He bought up Manhattan. I forgot the name, Klaus or something like this. But the day he died, he said he wished he bought more of Manhattan. That was it. Or his like last statements or whatever that were recorded.
Peter Minute, was that? No, that was not a long time ago.
The first millionaire Manhattan real estate. Yeah, maybe it's him.
Nicholas Berggren.
Yeah.
German billionaire.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I said Klaus.
Hey, that works for me.
Yeah. So he literally said that he wished he bought more real estate. He owns so much of Manhattan, passed that on to his family and so forth. And the reason real estate's so good for everybody is where you should roll in your money is because first of all, you're paying, if you don't get an interest-only loan, you're paying down what you own. Second, you could rent it, have someone pay it down. Third, it appreciates. And fourth, you could borrow against it. So when I first bought my first condo, I borrowed against it appreciation to get my house. I didn't have another $300,000, but because of luck, sheer luck, the appreciation in the Bay Area and the competitiveness here, I was able to take out money, buy my second house. Now my second house has over $1 million in equity. If I wanted to today, I would take out that and put it into something else. You know what I mean? And that's how you do it. You roll it over and roll it over. My other investment I bought for $1.7 million. It's probably $4 million today. And that's not remodeled. And if I do what I do with it, it's going to be an $8 million house. And when I'm older and I want to retire, I'll sell it and I have X, amount of money.
This gets into a bigger thing about the whole dynamic of the 1950s and houses now, for whatever, say what they want about it, they're kind of treated as commodities. It's like I buy it to invest, to get, money in the equity, take it out, buy this, whatever. When the old mindset was, we're going to buy a house, live here for 30 years.
Yeah, keep it forever.
Exactly.
Like your parents.
I'm going to retire there. Me and my wife are going to go travel the world and the house is paid for. I get the gold watch after I retire. And some people still want that, but we're in a market now where it pretty much, if you don't know how to play the game and getting a home, that whole idea doesn't really exist anymore.
It totally is. I'm glad you brought that point up, Michael. You hit it right on the head. It's almost like trading cards, right? It's like, or, you're getting something very exclusive in the Bay Area. There's only so many homes out here. That's the beauty of it, right? There's always going to be people coming in. Yes, right now there's a bigger exodus of people coming into San Francisco, or people leaving San Francisco versus coming in. And California in general, including LA.
Yeah.
However, overall, you're going to get people coming in and they can't build here anymore. My advice is condos. I personally wouldn't buy condos just because I've seen so many built in the Bay Area recently, especially downtown in Soma. Yeah. It's like nonstop, right? So that lowered my value of my condo because now someone comes in and goes, hey, there's like 6 other condos I could buy. Why would I buy yours? When I bought my first condo, I fell in love with it, and why it's special is because it was unique. It has a 1,200 square foot private patio overlooking downtown. Some couple, some person is going to come in there and they're going to say, I like that. I'm not planning to have kids. It's tiny, but I'm not planning. I need room for my dog or whatever to run around. But condos right now, I would not invest in. Don't even think about it. Get a single family home. Now, with the new California laws, you could split your lots. You could build 2 in the future. You could do so much with it.
Yeah, but it sort of goes to, what do you say to the people who just want to have that one home and live there like the old ways?
Listen, there's nothing wrong with that, right? It kind of goes back to that whole, hey, do you need to be an entrepreneur to enjoy your life? No, man. Like, ultimately, you and I want to be on the beach having margaritas. We could fucking talk about so many cool things, right? Like, we wouldn't even, and really not care. And that's, yeah, you could totally do that strategy. There are people that I know that have done that strategy and they've paid off that home, but you're not investing. I think if you want more, you got to do more. So you got to take the equity out and buy the neighbor across the street and then rent it because you're right there. You could see them every day. You make sure they're paying and so forth. I don't know. There's some rental insurance against non-payers nowadays. You could take that out just to protect your assets, but you got to keep flipping them. I think real estate's an investment vehicle. It's one of the biggest. I think it's the worst in the Bay Area, in San Francisco particularly, because of the laws are so skewed towards the renter, which makes sense because there's so many people taking advantage, but they're not even fair. As a landlord, I hate it, and I'm not buying any more investment properties in San Francisco personally.
So if you live in San Francisco and you have no kids, rent a condo, you're up easy street.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you're in San Francisco, you have no kids, condos are the way to go. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no maintenance, there's no this, there's no that. When I buy property, aside from the money side, we already talk about how do you get your first down payment, just like traditionally any other family that's done it here. The one thing I love is Asian culture. Asians, Chinese, etc., they save money like crazy. I've seen them live in a house, many families, until that family could afford to buy that next house. Then they do the same thing. And because of that, they're able to buy X amount of properties. I think that's miraculous. So if you're like living with your girlfriend, but you could live at your mom's house, yeah, it sucks. But you know what? It's nice to own a house eventually and have the down payment, right? So you're going to have to sacrifice something to get that.
What's the future hold for Simon? Do you ever see yourself slowing down in terms of entrepreneurship? Like, you know what? I've hit a point where I've owned so many businesses. I got enough money in the bank. Maybe I want to spend time to travel the world. Do you see yourself doing that?
So traveling is going to be part of my life. I already see it. I love traveling. That's the one thing my wife and I love more. I rather travel than do anything else personally. I will give up everything I have like materialistic things if I could say I could travel the rest of my time. Like I don't care for the new iPhone. I don't care for the watches. Like travel to me is more rewarding. It's memories. For me, I had the same discussion with that guy I was telling you about that's about to sell big. And I mean big. When I say big, I mean big. Okay. I'm very proud to know this guy and I've seen him for many years. He actually just did a conference, Money 2020. He was a speaker. You pay like $5,000 to go there as a visitor.
Wow.
You should look it up. It's kind of interesting for this show. But anyway, he's like, yeah, I might just sell and relax for a bit because he grinds, right? And that's why I respect him. And this guy's great. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't see you just relaxing. I see you doing stuff. So for me, I think I'm going to like always do something. And I'm always going to try to innovate, or I'm always going to try to dabble into some. There are now things I'm giving up. Like one thing I was doing during the pandemic, I saw all these people make money. I was like, hey, I could work at night and still do this. Like I still have my day jobs. I still have my kids. I still have them. But what's it to me while my wife's sleeping, the kids are put to bed, to get on and do these videos? And I have over 300 videos. I'm still doing them. I make jack off them. Like my time is more valuable than that. I know I'm so experienced in so many different aspects that I'm sharing it for free. And I think it's because I learned so much from YouTube myself that I'm attracted to it. But for example, I had another thing where I'm getting 100,000 views on a website called Tech Visibility, which reviews tech products, kind of like the Unbox Therapy.
Yeah.
I was like, screw it, I'll buy these products. I have a warehouse I'm building that's an office. I'll create a big studio and I'll review, and I'll go to Apple and I'll say, pay me $10,000. I'll review your thing or whatever, right? I still get companies emailing me saying, can you review it? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'll pay you $1,000. And I have like a price sheet and so forth, review, unbox a product. That channel gets that YouTube channel makes more money than my personal channel and gets like a lot of views, and I don't even care for it, and I have to let it go because time is money. If I was someone that was doing it full time, or I did it 10 years ago, like I told you, when I did my welding for my own brand, I could have made so much. And I think there's so much potential in personality if you do it. So for me, I don't know, if I dabble into something, it's not going to be anything that's, I don't feel either valuable to people like you mentioned, or a waste of my time, or a waste of my skill set, right? Because that's the most important. I think I'm highly skilled to a certain degree to help out or do things that are greater. I want to take a company public. That's what my next focus will be. If I get partnered with somebody, I won't be able to do it myself, but if I get partnered with somebody, right, that's going to be my focus.
Well, I think that speaks so much to how you think, is that you have a YouTube channel or a channel where if you wanted to spend time in it, you can make a pretty good amount of money on there reviewing products with big companies. But you're saying, you know what, as great as that would be, I actually get more joy, more fulfillment by doing my personal channel where I'm pretty much giving information away to people to help them become successful, because I've learned, and sometimes I've learned the hard way without even having anybody there to help me, how to make things actually work. And we feel it's so important to give back to those who maybe don't have it or want to go that path, but they don't have all the resources. So you putting your knowledge out there, saying, I have this channel, I don't make squat from it, but really, I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
I enjoy helping people, and I love hearing the stories that come back from the subscribers and people in the comments saying, "Thank you, Simon, for that advice. That really helped me out." Yeah,
I get people hit up all the time. Thank you. This. How do you do this? How do you get that? I mean, I'm not as popular on there and I haven't given it as much attention as I could. But I could have. I'd rather do that because I do see the long term. One day I do want to slow down and just do a podcast a week or whatever on my channel, and have maybe one episode talking about some stuff or whatever. And maybe hopefully it pays me enough residual income to enjoy a lifestyle that I like, of course, with all my other investments. But people are like, why do you do it? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? I said, okay, well, listen, how much, I have a friend, I'm like, he owns a property. I'm like, how much are you getting on your renter right now? Right? He's like, well, $1,000 a month. I'm like, well, I get $1,000 on YouTube from both channels or whatever, you know? So I'm like, it's the same thing. I don't have a property, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't worry about a tenant. It's all on me. If I don't put out a video, I don't put out a video. It's all on me. I'm the failure, not any, there's no market aspect. There's no, you know, weather related thing that could slow me down, no pandemic, etc. I'm just going to do what I do. And I think there is a future in it. It's not for everybody. It's hard work, man. Putting out these videos that you do, I know it's hard work. I know you're doing it. Editing it, setting the time, setting it up. I commend you because I do it too. Not, you know, and
we can relate on that.
It's hard, man.
People don't understand. This is going to be about a 2-hour episode. We'll wrap it up shortly here. And it'll take me about 8 hours to do all the editing, to clip them, to put it on YouTube, to make the Instagram reels, to put it on Spotify, Apple, whatnot. Not to mention bringing all this stuff here, setting it up, doing everything. And it's me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
But like I said, because it's a purpose bigger than myself, it's so enjoyable to actually do it that I don't mind it. And it gives me another sense of purpose that can add on to what I do for a living. Which, you know, me and my wife, we decided we don't want to have any kids.
Okay.
So
why did you decide that?
That's so the short story of it is that I didn't grow up around kids when I was younger. Okay. So I didn't have like everybody saying, you know, you're supposed to have, this is what we all did. Although there were a couple people in my family that did, not a lot of us did that. And, you know, my father's passed on now, so it's only my mother, and she lives, you know, where I grew up in Hayward.
Yeah.
And she's not the type who's going to say, I want, you know, grandchildren, I want to take care of them, raise them. She's very independent. Matter of fact, at 19, like in the 70s, she already had her own apartment by herself as a woman over there in Berkeley or Albany, which is something that now is no big deal. But back then, it's like, you just didn't see that.
Women didn't live themselves back then. It was probably not considered as a good thing.
Exactly. And she will also hear it too, growing up. It's like, you should be married, you're supposed to have kids, that old school mindset. But she grew up saying, no, I got to take care of myself. So now that she's on her own, she's like, hey, I want to make sure my life is taken care of, that, you know, I like having my own space. So I understand that. And then from where we're at, because the cost of living is so expensive,
that's tough.
Both of us are working, who's taking care of the kids?
What does your wife do?
She has her own business now as a hair colorist down. So we're just finalizing the construction. Hopefully everything goes off without a hitch. And then, you know, that business will be, you know, on the ground in a couple months. Congrats. Thank you. It's exciting, man. Good for you. Encouraging her. Thank you. It's important, you know, when my wife also entered the business or an entrepreneur, I told her, I said, hey, you could work or take care of the kids. And if something ever happens to me, you should have something, you know, and that's cool that you're encouraging her. You know, the kids thing, it'll come and go. You know, with men, as a man, there's no biological clock almost, right? Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be 65 with a, you know, newborn, although there are probably people that have that. But with women, it's different, and that's the sad thing. There's a lot of pressure on women for that time. It is. And it's one thing I've been so proud of her is that this whole business venture, she did everything on her own. The research and the loans, the permits, the contractors, the architects, everything. And it was so great that I didn't have to get in there and try to say, okay, let me go fix this. Because that's your instinct as a guy is, hey, let me go figure this out. She did it all on her own. This is her baby. And whatever help she needs from me, I'm there for her. But really, this is her thing here that she's building. So if I ever, you know, pass on, well, one day we're all going to do that. So this is something that she built, she can carry on with her. Yeah, it's cool, man. And it, you know, it just, first of all, it'll build her confidence, a grind. And just to get to this point, I applaud her because it's not easy. I've seen it all, and the grind is what people don't see on Instagram or on any of these channels. And it's so difficult, and it's so not rewarding. It's so tiring. It's so depressing. It's so financially stressful. It's stressful, period, on the body, the mind. It's not for everybody. And, you know, the point of it is that if you are going to try it and attempt it, you got to go all the way in. Going halfway in, it's very difficult to maintain that. You got to be a special person to be able to manage 2 things or 3 things or 4 things. And, you know, but at the end of the day, you can't take it all with you. So you got to build something for, in my opinion, a legacy for the next generation or you know, for a reason. And whether it's you're giving back to the community in one way or another, you're giving to your children, whatever that may be, that
is for you.
And you're Jewish, you said, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So isn't it that Jewish proverb that every man has to have a son, plant a tree, read a book, or write a book?
So there's a lot of one day I'll write a book because I see it, but and there's so many stories. I mean, from everything, but I'm not. My father was so busy working, I wasn't really into religion growing up as much. I respect the Jews for, having to move, given basically nothing, and constantly succeeding. They're hardworking people. They're smart. Like I mentioned, I respect the Asian people earlier as well. I think in the Bay Area, man, they're really killing it. They're buying up real estate. They're doing their thing. I just wish that. With raising kids here and not having that mentality of true culture and understanding, I just hope my kids one day learn that, hey, it's not that easy and that you got to grind out, because the immigrants that come here, they work harder than the people that are here. And that's why the next generations are going to be in better positions that know the grind,
They're doing the jobs that none of us want to do. Like you're walking around here and you've seen the people that are working hard. They're keeping the place clean. It's like they appreciate the work.
They'll do the jobs. They'll do the work. They'll work twice. It's all immigrants. It's because they're like, hey, this is my one shop. And there are some advantages and disadvantages to it, but overall, you just got to grind, man. I don't look at people like, oh, where are you from, this and that. It's grind. It's in your DNA. It's like either you do it or you don't in your mental state, and it could be adjusted. So it's not, I don't think you're born with it. Mm-hmm. That's a different topic. I think it could be adjusted.
But like you, being an immigrant coming here, knowing what life was like before you came here and being so appreciative of what is here.
But it's like, dude, there are other people that did the same. They came here and they're doing drugs. I don't know. It's
that's also true.
It's like it's what you want, and it's what's in your cards. It's what's in your DNA. It's what your blueprint says you have to have. Mm-hmm. So for me, I want more. I'll do more. I know I won't get more if I don't do more.
Exactly.
So that's it.
We're going to end the show here. Simon, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. There's a lot that we didn't get to that I'm sure we'll get to at another time. You're always welcome to come back on again, and I'd be happy to keep the conversation going.
Thanks for having me, man. It's my first podcast, so I hope everybody enjoyed it. When you put it out, if anyone has any questions, let me know. If they want to follow me, Simon I Know on Instagram, and then on YouTube, it's just Simon Katz with a K, K-A-T-Z. Any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer, and I look forward to having you on my podcast, and then I'll be back if you ever want me, so just let me know.
We'll make it happen in the future. I'll put the links down in the description for your website. Is that the best way to contact you if they have a question about something specific?
So I think Instagram's been the best way for me because it's more personal. I separate people's advice with personal stuff versus business, and a lot of times it's just quick little questions for direction, and I try to get back to everybody. So
that sounds great. Simon, thank you for coming on. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you share this with somebody who can also benefit from the information that Simon has. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Simon. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.